Did
Well,
you want
yes, I'm glad we're having this one-on-one because we didn't talk about a task force yet. And we are going to talk about setting up a task force on the 16th, which will then invite not on the 16th, but when we decide, and if we decide to have a task force, the sheriff will be part of that task force, I'm hoping.
Okay.
And so, but in terms of the contract, I'm going to jump ahead to the body cams. We certainly want to make sure that there's no chokehold allowed in any training. There was a suggestion that if there's any wrongdoing, that it would be recorded for public purposes, and that if it had to be prosecuted, it would be prosecuted by another state's attorney, not of Palm Beach County.
Huh. Okay. That's an idea I have not heard before, which actually I like. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, the others, I want to make sure that everybody understands that we're talking, or I'm interested in systemic racism. The PBSO is not a target. They are a part of
The solution.
the solution, and as we all are, a part of the problem. So, and because they represent society. They're reflective of society. There's as many bad apples in society, and they reflect the good and the bad of us all.
Okay, so you said you wanted to talk body cameras first.
Well, it's the contract. I just want to make sure that there's chokeholds are not allowed, and that we will be reviewing hopefully in the task force the training process and the policies of use of force. And the thing that I'm most interested in our commission deciding on is whether to work with the other 12 communities that the PBSO serves, and to hope that they are as interested in body cams as I am. And if they are, that would impact the sheriff's decision. And with a budget of his size, I would hope that he could prioritize body cams in that budget.
Yeah, I guess I'll address the chokeholds first. So I understand, it's my understanding that chokeholds are not a part of how they're trained, obviously, but that deputies are not allowed to use chokeholds. That's my understanding based on public statements from their office, and that's a part of the 8 Can't Wait program or list or whatever, but which is a great thing. And so I'm very happy that they are not allowed to use them. So with that particular thing, it may not be an issue here, but I'm obviously really interested in the body cameras, right, which is a tool. But I think more broadly, the goal for me, and it's not just for our city, but for all the cities in Palm Beach County, is to make sure that there is civilian oversight of law enforcement. And I think that, look, cities often leave police departments kind of to their own devices. You draw up your own policies. Chief of police and management, or in this case, Rick Bradshaw is negotiating with the PBA And there's not, in our case, a lot of civilian oversight when it comes to, certain policies, or, pretty much any policies, or, when it comes to training, or, when it comes to being able to say that, hey, body cameras is something that we want. It's something that we absolutely need in our community. Those are the sorts of things that the sorts of policy decisions that I think should really be coming from bodies like ours. And after those decisions are made, obviously, you want to work very closely with the frontline officers and with their supervisors as far as implementing them. But I don't know that Lake Worth Beach is in a position today to say to our partners at PBSO, we would like, we need body cameras to be worn by our deputies here. I don't know if you understand what I'm getting at here, Herman, but I would like a lot more of the policy to come from civilians. And I don't know how you feel about that, but when it comes to training, when it comes to use of force, when it comes to whether these body worn cameras are actually going to be used, when it comes to the policies as to how they're going to be used, those are things that I really think should be coming from the community who are being policed.
I never want to be a policeman. I don't even like turning in anybody for a code violation.
Right.
And the responsibilities of cops doing the right thing is tremendous. They have to make decisions, every day that the consequences can be turn out not in their favor. I think that they are trained well. There are individuals that don't take training well. I might be one of them, but I don't think civilian input into training is not where I want to go.
Well,
consequences, yes, but
sure, sure. But for example, right? I want to know that in our case, deputies are being trained to de-escalate situations. I want to know, for example, that deputies are reaching a certain number of hours annually when it comes to dealing with people with mental health issues. I want to know that deputies are being trained rigorously to deal with sensitive issues like sexual assault and things like that. And look, these sorts of issues, training, this is not something that I'm read up on, right? But this is something that if it were our responsibility, the same way that we have responsibilities in a range of things that require expert knowledge, like the electric utility, for example, this is something that I think, the overall direction of the training, we should be able to say, like if there weren't lots of training for dealing with people with mental health, when they're having a crisis, then I think as civilians who are going to run into folks, not just the folks with the mental health problems, but who could also run into the deputies, I think we should be able to say, hey, this needs to be a priority. And so, I don't know. I think we should definitely look to see how folks at PBSO, in our case, are trained. And I think we should go ahead.
Sheriff Bradshaw has said that, mental health is one of the greatest exposures to the sheriffs that is the most difficult to deal with.
Right.
And
this is why I want to learn more about it.
Well, and then I also want to understand that there's psychological testing or psychological understanding of their job is understood, and whether they go through a rigorous training program or whatever you want to call it before they're hired, or even on a review basis every year or two, just to see whether it's affecting their behavior with the stress that they encounter. they can change their attitude. People go bad, start off good, and with the job, it changes.
Sure.
I would somehow like to incorporate that into the future.
Yeah. All right. So let's just so that there's some order here. Do you want to go item by item here in these topics and kind of proceed that way?
Well, the contract, if we're yes, let's deal with the contract. It's that's a city manager type negotiation. The sheriff has been good to us locally.
Yeah.
We have had excellent, very good luck, I'm going to say, with situations in Lake Worth. Yes, there's crime, and we can go there, but the contract involves I'm going to hope the requirement of body cams.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. There are reforms that I would like to see made, right? And I want these reforms to be, contractually guaranteed, right? When it comes to body cameras, it's something that I would like to see put in the contract. When it comes to, certain other things that, we'll have an opportunity to discuss, you talked about, civilian review of, officer complaints or, like accountability, like, those are the sorts of things that I would like to have as a part of the contract. And, it's my understanding, every year, and I have the contracts here, these contracts are up every single year. And so in August, typically, these things are renewed by the commission. And typically this is kind of a negotiation that happens between the city manager or the mayor and our counterparts at the sheriff's office. But that's not the way necessarily that these negotiations have to be. For example, much like the school board, we can open up the negotiation, and the negotiation would have to be in public to the entire body. Much as the school district does in their contract, for example, with the Classroom Teachers Association, right? And so this is an important issue. And, I think we should try to figure out some of the things that we would like in the contract going forward, and how strongly we feel about them, right? And so, you mentioned body cameras right off the bat. Is there anything else that you want to see in the contract?
Not specifically, but we are now more aware of police behavior than ever before, and there's pros and cons to everything. And I think the pros of a body cam far outweigh the cons.
Right. So look, I'll just, some things I would like in the contract, right? So, first off, I recognize that our partners at the sheriff's office are very, big fans of broken windows policing, which, that is still a very popular way to look at fighting and reducing crime. The idea that, these low-level infractions create an environment of lawlessness that lead to more serious crime. Broken glass on the ground from windows, graffiti, things that, turnstile jumping, things like that, right, lead to, more serious criminal behavior. And there's another school of thought that basically says, when you criminalize all these, some folks would say ticky-tack things, rather than having them be civil issues and writing people tickets for example, having a drink on the sidewalk in front of their house, or jumping a turnstile, or, things like that, that basically you're creating lots and lots of interactions between people and the police, and that all of these interactions don't go very well. So like, I, for one, would like to see some of these, minor infractions not dealt with in a criminal way, right? Like, I don't want folks to be arrested for, possessing small amounts of marijuana. I think the county commission passed an ordinance giving deputies the option to arrest them or to write someone a ticket. And it's my understanding that it's PBO policy still to arrest folks for possessing these small amounts of marijuana. We also like those little interactions rather with the police that multiply, right? And I'm not sure that that's that these sorts of things are worth criminalizing. I don't know how you feel about that, but there's a list of infractions.
We can go to prison reform, and yes,
Right.
I don't know that you can put not arresting people for marijuana in the contract, but I certainly would think that we should suggest that our sheriffs address more serious issues than weed.
I would certainly like to try. Like if we were a city that had a police department, right? And we weren't dealing with a constitutional officer who's, there's this whole separation of powers thing, right? Like if we were a city that had our own police department, as a body, we could decide, you know what? We're not arresting people for, possessing 2 grams of marijuana. If you find someone with 2 grams of marijuana, you write them a ticket and you move on. Or, we're not going to arrest someone for, as in some jurisdictions, and I'm not sure if this is the case, but consumption of alcohol on the sidewalk, marijuana possession, you're spitting, jaywalking, bicycling on the sidewalks. And, we'd have to look offense by offense, right, for these sorts of ticky-tack things and ask ourselves, first of all, are these, is there the potential for these things to be criminalized? Like, are there criminal statutes that PBSO could use to arrest people for them in the first place? And if there are, I think we should decide on a case-by-case basis, not like case-by-case basis, individually, but on an infraction-by-infraction basis, whether or not we want the folks who are doing the policing in our community, PBSO, to actually arrest someone for possessing 2 grams of marijuana. And I would totally want to get something like this into a contract, because I don't think that these interactions with the police, those minor interactions with police, have value. And I think that they carry lots of liability for us on the other side. Like Eric Garner, selling counterfeit cigarettes, or selling cigarettes without a permit, or whatever it was, right? That was what led him to be choked to death, right? So it was this little interaction with the police about counterfeit or selling the cigarettes through some unofficial means that led to him to have this terrible interaction. And same thing with George Floyd. It was a counterfeit $20 bill, that there was a question about, right? And so I don't know how you feel about those, but I feel very strongly that we should not be encouraging serious interactions with the police over those minor infractions.
I agree. And, we can take this all the way up, down in the national level of behavior. Which
is that something you would want in the PBSO contract?
Well, no, I guess my real interest is in how we got here. In terms of the Minnesota cop murdering somebody in the public without any consequences from the surrounding. It's astounding, and I don't know how we're going to talk about changing people's. I want to talk about it. I don't want to just talk about I want to talk about everybody, not just the sheriffs. It's
sure. Look, there's lots of policing is one area in which there's a need for reform. I think there are lots of other areas, and I think you hit it on the head. Education. I talk about housing a lot. Health has been in the news due to disparities with COVID-19, and which is, by the way, related to housing. I think there are lots of areas where we can tackle this issue of racial equity. But I think the low-hanging fruit is a document that we renew every year with someone who provides police services to our city. And obviously, I have tremendous respect for the guys who are here. And what I told someone today who asked me about it was the deputies. Captain Bear has been phenomenal, and he's been very careful about the deputies that he brings into the city, and he's chosen some really good ones, and they do a good job. But this issue of equitable constitutional policing is not an issue that I think should be individualized. The individuals who are here right now today are great. And over time, we're going to have different sheriffs. We're going to have different captains. We're going to have different deputies here. And it's my goal to put in place systems that encourage good behavior and that reduce the interactions that folks have with the police for things that are not truly threatening, and that make sure that there's equity, and putting like those systems, like, that's what this contract to me is all about. It's something written in stone that no matter who's here, we can come and go. At least for a year at a time, it's in there.
And locally, I get the sense that some of the neighborhoods would rather have a sheriff come to their neighborhood association meetings than to go once a month to one general meeting.
That's a perfect example of, yeah.
Community
And that's
outreach.
something that should be in the contract. Otherwise, how do we guarantee that it happens?
Well, I guess we're going to talk about responsiveness. If we don't get I don't know how you can put subjectivity into a contract, but if we don't get response on citizen desire, there has to be consequences for that.
Well, so, I guess what's the ideal mechanism for you to guarantee some of the things that we want long term, whether that's body cameras, for example, is something that you want, right? What tool exists between us and PBSO to make sure that body cameras are used in the way that we would like them to be used?
I would hope for unanimity on the council, the commission, but and I would think that would be the easiest way to approach this. And I'm glad we're having a conversation. And the public, and I see that there's a lot of interest. They deserve to know how we feel about the interactions of our sheriffs and the contract, and how we feel about systemic racism. And I just think, it's I don't want to say a cop out to say that listening is good, but if we don't have a conversation, there's nothing to listen to.
Sure.
So I appreciate this as a start to better communication with everybody.
Well, I mean, so let's say, and I think you've been consistent about the communication between the city and the residents, and us fostering these sorts of conversations. But let's say that there is unanimity on this dais here. Us being unanimous in support of body-worn cameras, for example, doesn't mean that we get body-worn cameras, because our counterpart is
we can approach the other 12 communities at least,
right.
to maybe incorporate that conversation.
I guess what I'm getting at is the contract is the only way to make sure that things we want PBSO to be doing, or the tools we want them to use, the contract is the only way to make sure that it actually sticks. Otherwise, it's a handshake, or it's a wink, wink, nod, nod. But it could be a lot like the meetings that we've always had traditionally, where deputies came to our neighborhood associations and spoke with us. It's not in the contract, so at any time that can change, right? And so I would hope that as we come up to a contract negotiation, we can take the position that body cameras is something that we want, and we want it to be in the contract. And I think there are a range of things, but I don't, Herman, is body-worn cameras being in the contract something that you would like to see?
Seriously, you're yes, but
Okay.
I would also like us as a commission to unanimously be in favor of it, and to ask our fellow community people that have the contract, or hopefully the same contract.
Right.
Maybe we should look at all the other contracts. Are they the same? I don't know.
Well, what I can tell you is that there's a group in the county that I'm a member of that will be looking at issues like this throughout the county, and the relationship, or the contracts that these cities that are served by PBSO, that they have those contracts, what's in them and what's not in them, is something that we're going to be looking at. And also, municipalities around the county. And look, this is the Organization of Black Elected Officials here in Palm Beach County. We care about this, and so we will be looking at that. And we have friends who are elected in other areas, and they often ask us for our endorsements, and we've said that we will withhold our endorsements from local elected and state and county elected officials who don't push for these reforms to be implemented. And we'll see what value that has over time, right? But yeah, like there are definitely organizations looking at that. But I guess, look, if we went to another city that has PBSO, and I won't name any names, and we would say, hey, other city, are you interested in? Go ahead.
Wellington.
Okay. Now, so what would we, how would we approach them? What would we be trying to get them to do?
I'm going to say put pressure on Sheriff Bradshaw to find in his budget to afford body cams on everybody. I see that I think it's a protection for sheriffs. I think it's a protection for the citizens, and it would minimize. It's going to change behavior on both sides.
Yep.
If you are, I'm sure if we were having a drink, I'd probably talk a little differently than 20 people are watching this. No.
Yeah. Well, no, look, and look, like the literature is really clear. And West Palm Beach, they did a study with FAU, right, when they started using body cameras. And what they found was that supervisors, before they were implemented, the supervisors loved them. The frontline officers hated them, a majority of them, right? And then after they started using them, the opinion of the frontline officers who were wearing them changed, right? Because no more was there a question when someone made a complaint about them as to what actually happened. There's a record of what happened. There's a record of the
we ought to talk about union influence and who's going to influence unions, or how they're chosen, how their leaders are chosen, what the turnover is for their leadership. Power corrupts, absolutely.
I agree, but here's my feeling. First of all, we don't negotiate with the union. That would be the constitutional office that we hire, right? That we contract to provide these services. They negotiate with the union, and so it's very difficult for us to kind of. And I'm not sure that I would want to meddle in how they elect their legislative affairs guys or their presidents, or what sorts of terms that they have. But I do know that any organization that has a contract with a union, and especially with a union like the police union, should obviously is charged with thinking about what's in the best interest of the public. And I say that as someone who carried a union card for 3 years, right, and whose parents carried a union card for 30. So I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is, I know that the union is a salient issue, and that there are lots of things to be worked out between the hiring agency and the union, but I don't know if that's our purview. I think really our only leverage, and the same goes for all these cities that have PBSO, their only leverage is we have a contract with PBSO.
It's a reflection on the whole hierarchy of of policing. And
sure.
when you get the sense that they're not going to do the right thing because they're protecting their union members versus doing the right thing, I don't know how we can change that. But that's part of the societal problem, is that we do things too politically instead of correctly or right. And I just, I want the sheriffs to understand that we expect all people in that organization to do the right thing.
Yeah. No, look, you you're hitting on an issue that's very legit. I just don't know.
I didn't see that Tuesday.
She's saying, I think, address the cost. Her sign is backwards. Basically, we spend 51% of the money that comes in and out of the cities, for general dollars, we spend that on PBSO. And it's not just it's the FRS contributions and all that stuff too, which is an issue. But I just, as far as look, here's my philosophy, Herman. If I'm just talking with you here, I think our leverage is that we want PBSO. Yes, PBSO wants us because we fund PBSO every year with money that comes from our taxpayers, and they have some leverage and we have some leverage. And there are things that I think should be happening, but that the only way to guarantee them is to get them in the contract. Anything that's not in the contract between us and PBSO is something that can be changed by PBSO at their discretion. And so if the goal is to guarantee a better system here of policing that doesn't depend on us having good individuals in the department at this given time or at any given time, then we should try to work it into the contract.
Well, we can put in, if an officer if there's complaints, they have to be made public because and a certain number of complaints would require a different level of reaction, and then we could do a contract with the level of response.
Okay, so you think that how complaints are handled, there should be something in the contract addressing one, when the public finds out about complaints against a given officer, and
just
then
to know about it. They have their own internal investigation, which is supposed to deal with that.
Do you view police officers investigating police officers as a part of the problem?
They know the job. It's not an easy job. Maybe there should be the internal investigation plus an outside. I don't know.
You use the Lord Acton quote, which I like a lot. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Which is why, for example, in certain cities, there are community review boards, right? So a complaint is made against an officer, and rather than one officer investigating another officer investigating a peer, someone who he dresses with in the locker room and who he knows, right? Rather than officers investigating officers, there's a group of individuals who are a part of the community, who do not have family members who are on the police force or who are police officers, but who get trained every year in policing tactics and things like that. It's a serious job. It's a serious public service responsibility. And this board of civilians investigates the complaint and determines whether there's merit, and then provides consequences for the deputy. And I guess this goes to my point about civilians leading the police and not the other way around. I get that the job is hard, right? But I don't know of very many jobs where the people who hold workers accountable are the other workers. Unions. Yeah. Well, look, I'm a member of a union, but if there's a complaint against a teacher, it's not other teachers investigating the complaint. There's a supervisor, or there's an inspector general, there's someone not there. And
can we just go through the public just quickly and say whether we are on the right track or we want to go somewhere else in terms of continuing this conversation?
Sure.
Are you good with that, or how do we do this?
I'm okay. So I guess how much public comment do you want? Because
all I'm asking for right now is do we continue this conversation in the direction it's going in terms of a contract? just a show of hands would work for me. But
Okay, so there's a function I think on here that is about, there's like a raise hand function or a thumb raise function. Is that a part of the functionality here?
Keith, can you help?
Keith?
Is Keith on?
Is there a thumbs up function?
Sorry. Yes, there is a raised hand that they could use. I think everyone is free to unmute themselves. They should just
Hold
mute
on.
them again if they
Yeah,
talk.
I'm not sure we want unmuting, but at least right now. But maybe, okay, so if you think that we should not continue discussing the contract,
Raise your
I
hand.
guess raise your hand. On the thing, there's a thing.
That's a no for for continuing the conversation.
If you click participants, you should get a little panel that will have a raise hand button.
At the bottom right, yeah, at the bottom right, if you click it.
We want to talk about the contract.
Okay,
This is going to turn into a really stupid
Yeah.
technological thing. So this is not the direction to go. I think personally, now that I have the floor, you need to hear from all of these people on the screen, because what you two have been talking about goes here and there and all over the place. And there are a number of things in my mind that need to be solidified. And
Frank.
Omari, you're correct, and Herman, you're correct. And yes, my last comment will be, before I check out, is this is how this works. And it's recorded and it is out there.
Good.
sure.
And you have citizens who are stepping up and saying, yeah.
Thank you
Okay.
for your comments.
So I guess we'll just go person by I mean, I have a list here of everybody, and I'll just call your name, and we'll try to keep it brief. But okay, so I guess we're going to public comment at this time.
That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Okay, Cheryl Rashkin.
Okay, I found my button. Mine's different than you guys's. Good evening. I just wanted, on a couple of the issues that you already hit on, was state statute supersedes our city ordinances. So if you want something to change in reference to some of the minor issues that you discussed for the arrests that are being made, such as marijuana, you have to go through the state statute and get it changed. And in fact, that one's a federal guideline. So you'd have to start there. Second, the contents for the contract are all open to the public. They're all sunshine. They're all listed. So the person that asked that question about seeing the contract, they're all there. All you have to do is go in to ask for a public record request, and they'll give them to you for not only that one, but for each agency that they have a contract with. Second of all, I think we need to move on. Dealing with a contract is a great idea, but you need to have all parties involved in the contract, because as having done this for a few years, you got to have them all, especially when it comes to government entities and government entities enter into a mutual agreement. So that's what I want to say. And I just think we need to move on. Thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Irene?
Cheryl, if you can, okay, I'll lower your hand. Irene Latour.
Hi, yes. My only question is, I know that we can request the budget, but I think the city of Lake Worth needs to be more transparent. Have it on the website already. I shouldn't have to go on and request a public records on a budget where I'm a member of the city. Just have it available for all of us to go visit and see it, instead of having to do 20,000 public requests to get one document. That's really all I have to say.
I agree with you. It's actually a requirement by under state statute that we put our budget on the website, and it's not up there. I imagine our attorneys are going to say something about ADA, but I don't feel that that's a good enough excuse. I imagine that we can pull together ADA compliant documents or, versions of these documents and get them out there. And Cheryl, I agree with you 100%. If we could get the legislature to change these statutes on marijuana possession and things like that, then sure. I don't imagine that, given the way that the legislature is composed right now, that will be coming out of the legislature. But what I do know is Palm Beach County basically gave the sheriff, the county commission gave the sheriff the option, because they can't say you can't, arrest, right?
Correct.
But I would like to give them the option here not to arrest folks for what I believe are these minor infractions. And then at that point, it's up to the constitutional officer, right? Because he's the constitutional officer and he runs his situation there. I guess Tuesday.
Next Tuesday, right?
No,
Yeah.
there is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There's
I'm gonna go
Tuesday.
on mute.
I-
Tuesday Torres is a person.
Yeah,
She's a
hi
person.
everybody. I'm Tuesday, but actually Kara's gonna go ahead and speak. Hi, I'm Kara Jennings, and I think we want to talk about the contract, but just not the direction you guys are going with the contract.
Okay.
This issue with the contract is the cost. And the cost contractually goes up every year. That's why 10 years ago, we still spent too much, but it was probably about 38% of our budget on the police. Combined with fire, we call it public safety, and it was, up in the 40-something percentage. But now, because you guys have no control over the contractual increases in the sheriff's contract, it's going up and up and up every year. So now we find ourselves at spending 51% of our public money on policing. I understand that includes pension costs, but it's dramatic. And if you look at surrounding cities, no one else is spending that much on policing. Lantana is about 33%. Boynton is at 36. West Palm Beach, you have to do that same annoying thing of requesting the budget as Lake Worth, so it's hard to get their numbers. So this is the critical issue. We cut 20% from our library's funding this year, and we increased the police budget. So we have a library that gets 1.18% of our public funds while we give the police 51%. Nothing's going to change here if you guys continue on this path. You're the elected officials. The biggest thing you have control over is the purse strings. Yeah, you can't control state statute. You can't control the sheriff, but you, Herman, and you, Omari, can help control what the budget gets spent on. And that's why we elect people, is to make the laws and spend the money. So why are you spending 51% on the sheriff's contract? And when are you going to address that part of the contract? Thank you.
So, and I'll let Herman, Herman, you can chime in any time, but I voted against this budget. I didn't think it was a good budget. I'll say that, I don't want to spend, 51% or anything close to that on police long term. I think one of the reasons why that is, though, is because our general fund lacks the kind of revenue that other cities have. And, I think, if we had, frankly, more valuable property in the city, the amount of money that we spend as a portion of our overall budget on police would go down, because we would be taking in more revenue. So I think that partly reflects the issue there, is that those other cities, Boynton, Delray, et cetera, they have huge tax receipts that we just frankly don't have. And, folks say, oh, it's because we're just a 7 square mile city. No, like if you were to take a look at the taxable value of their property on a per acre basis, on a per square mile basis, which common sizes it based on the size of the city, we take in still less money, right?
Omari,
So,
Lantana has a lower budget and spends less on the police. Please, let's not make excuses. Let's just talk about how are we actually gonna work to reduce the way we've become so dependent on what the sheriff offers as services. And yet sadly, we have no control. And that is the reality.
Karen,
I
I don't disagree.
Sheriff Bradshaw.
I would like, Kara, thank you. That was well put, but I would like to measure our parity with other cities differently. I am a little tired of making excuses for being poor. which
Yeah.
is, which
Me
has
too.
been used and just, I'm really tired of, you know, I haven't been, I've been at the lower end of the economic spectrum growing up, and there was no excuse for having clean clothes and washing, you know, acting like a normal person. And if we continue to use our poverty situation as an excuse for behaving in society the way other cities do, I think we need a change.
I appreciate that. Jim Kearney? Jim Kearney? Kearney?
Next.
Okay, Melissa Marco Salerno. Got
Hi,
it.
how are you? Hi,
All right.
everybody. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm not gonna pretend I know what this whole, the whole situation is and the way things work, but from a community member standpoint, it really seems like the cart is being put in front of the horse. Like, we wasted a ton of time talking about a contract that nothing is going, we can't do anything about that right in this moment. What can we do right in this moment? Can we talk about racial equity and education and create a plan and maybe have some jump off point and some ideas and strategies to bring to the Tuesday meeting? I feel like we really got kind of lost in some ramifications of contract and a bunch of blah, blah, blah that doesn't really change anything or do anything. And from my perspective, this is really body cams, no body cams, it doesn't matter. If we don't change the perception of how the police look at the community members and the strategies that they use and how powerful they feel, they're going to do whatever the hell they want to do because they're still the cops and they still don't have any accountability. And I just feel that maybe we need to kind of proceed with some ideas of how can we address racism directly in our community, and then maybe look at some strategies with regards to PBSO or the police system and things like that. But what can we do today? What can the city do today to start to change? I don't see, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see that any definitive change as of this moment, just more confusion.
Well, let me assure you that if all the sheriffs were wearing body cams, things would change immediately. But doing that is going to take time. And the purpose of this back and forth is to come to an agreement that things need to change.
Wasn't Corey Hart on the phone with 911 when he was shot dead?
Right. Hold on one second.
Those policemen?
Yeah, but Melissa, that's exactly the point, right? So without him, and that's a perfect point. So here's what happened, right? Corey Jones was murdered in cold blood. There's no way you can say that guy was not murdered in cold blood. The only reason why the guy went to jail for it, and the only reason why he's not cruising around someone's neighborhood right now, is because Corey was on the phone with roadside assistance. If Corey was not on the phone with roadside assistance, which the grand jury found out through their investigation, and if there were not a recording of his heinous killing, then that guy, Newman Raja, is patrolling somebody's neighborhood right now. And so here's what's crucial. If Newman Raja knew that murder was being recorded, do you think he acts that way? No. And so what the research shows is that when you film the police, they tend, not in every case, but they tend to change their behavior. Not only do the police officers, Yeah, exactly. And it's the other way around.
I don't want somebody who's racist to act non-racist just because they're being filmed. How about we change the perspective? We don't hire racist cops, or if we find out they're racist, they're done.
I agree wholeheartedly. And Herman, you can just, but here's my thing. It is hard to know before you hire someone what's in their heart. That's a difficult thing to determine in the course of an interview. So what you try to do, I got you, Marina, what you try to do is set up systems of oversight so that when things invariably go wrong, and they will go wrong, you will make bad hires, that there's accountability and justice, which, by the way, acts as a deterrent for other members of the force. And there's research on, like the numbers are really, really clear on body. It's hard to say that they're not effective. I get it that racist police officers shouldn't be on the force, but you can't, there's no surefire way to say this person's a racist or this person's not a racist.
I appreciate Melissa's
I sure do.
in moving forward. My patience is getting shorter and shorter. And if you expect something to change tomorrow, I hope you're not badly disappointed. So let's, there was another hand up.
Yeah, Marina, Shauna, and Jorge, in that order. Okay, Marina. Oh, you got to unmute yourself.
Yes, I just unmuted. Hi, everyone. So I'm going to try to keep this really quick. I'm just going to go down my list. So number one, I know change takes time. It's not a marathon, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, which is someone mentioned that in regards to the racism conversation. Obviously, mentalities will take forever to change, and hopefully they do in someone's lifetime. I worked at a police department in the communications department, and I went through rigorous training from neighbors being interviewed to doing a lie detector, which I passed with flying colors. And I really don't know if police also go through that type of because I wasn't hired as a police officer. Do they go through that process? That's one thing I would like to know in regards to the Sheriff's Department, PBSO. And because at the end of the day, police cannot be desensitized. I know social workers might, but police officers cannot, we can't afford for them to be desensitized. They have to constantly be reminded to have sensitivity. And in regards to hiring them, I would hope that they're, background checked, even their social media accounts, because nowadays that really reflects a lot on your character, your attitude, just to make sure that it's not just a background check or a lie detector, or, if they're, higher, or if they, all those things that typically go through an interview process, but much more focus on racism. So training obviously has to be better, but I think that really has to start from the beginning of hiring.
Good point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Shauna?
So actually it's my daughter Jasmine that wants to speak to
Hi.
you. So go ahead, Jasmine.
So I don't feel safe. Like if my dad were to go out driving, like I don't feel safe. Like how do I know that he wouldn't come
We
back?
can't hear you, Jasmine. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Go ahead.
So I don't feel safe knowing that like my dad maybe couldn't come home at night. Like I don't feel safe, and I know that I'm not the only one who feels that way. But I feel like the cameras, that's not going to bring them back. That'll put them in, that will give them justice so that won't happen like with that same person again. But that's not going to bring the people back. So that's why equity, that's why those trainings could help, and the contract, like changing the contract or where the money goes as well. So yeah.
Jasmine, I appreciate that. I appreciate that wholeheartedly. Thank you for, first of all, participating in a town hall meeting with your city commissioners. I don't know, Herman, do you have anything for Jasmine?
If we want to do anything, we have to bring it to our commission and see where it goes. that, you know, we're putting ourselves out there. I think the public deserves to know how everybody on the commission feels about voting to at least put some pressure on the sheriff to have body cams and to communicate with the other towns that have PBSO to communicate with the sheriff.
With all due respect, if I could echo my daughter's sentiments,
Yes.
my husband is Hispanic and Black. And, you know, I think there's a lot of issues at stake as far as xenophobia and racism and people living in poverty in our communities and how they're treated. And, you know, we have a lot of conversations to have in that respect, but as far as racial profiling, it's happening all the time. Yeah. And I mean, it's not new, but now that it's so in the media, my daughter is even more afraid. You know, I mean, we drove through northern Florida recently and saw Confederate flags up, and my husband was afraid to get out of the car. So it's, you know, it's how we're treating our undocumented citizens who are our farmers. It's how we're treating the Haitian community, the Black community. It's how the police are, you know, there's no accountability is what I keep seeing written in the chat box. And you know, agreeing to change the budget so that we are funding our community members that are living in poverty and looking out for those who are disenfranchised instead of funding the police that are actually trying to punish innocent citizens who are doing the same things that white people are doing, you know, and just trying to make an honest living and live a normal life. They're being stopped for no reason. So, I mean, I think looking at the budget is number one. And I think I want to hear you guys say we're gonna defund that 51% is outrageous. I mean, why is our library that's serving the people and offering services, what other services can we spend that money on to help build up our community instead of tear them down?
Shauna, you know, first of all, I agree with you that we shouldn't be spending half of our money on the police. I didn't vote for that budget. I voted against it. And when we were having the budget presented to us, one of the questions that I asked our finance director was basically, does this amount, you know, we use the term level services budget, right? And you know, the exchange went like this. He said he asked for a level services budget from his department heads. Department heads gave him level services budget. He compared that to the money that we had. We didn't have that money. So he said, you need to come back with a different budget. So I then asked, does that mean that this is not a level services budget? The response from our finance director was, well, I wouldn't say that any services are being cut. That was the exact exchange. After the budget passed, which I voted against, then the hours to the library were cut and staff to the library was cut. And it was said to me, well, it's sophomoric to say that just because you're cutting hours and staff at the library that services are being cut. And therefore I wasn't lied to because we have a different idea as to what it means to cut services. That was what I went through going through this budget, right? And so, you know, what I'll say is I agree wholeheartedly. We shouldn't be spending half of our money on policing. That doesn't make a lot of sense. And, you know, I don't, and Herman has been one of these folks who has been for amenities and parks and things like that. I've been one of these folks that have been for things that I think get justice for people, making sure folks who are being evicted have attorneys. I know Herman and I have a disagreement about that, but I think, you know, a woman from Guatemala whose daughter has been her translator, right, going to eviction court against some guy at Cersei Denny is not fair, right? And that's something that I've sought to fund with fines that come from landlords, right? So I'm on you on the social services standpoint. I'm on you on the fact that our money should be used to reduce the misery of human beings living in poverty. I totally get that. And
so we can give direction to the city manager that each one of us, either individually, which is how it's been operating, or collectively from the dais, have input into the priorities of how we spend the sheriff's part of that budget. And we're into safety and public service, which is difficult to cut, but it's all in how you spend it, the priorities of what you've got. If I give you $10, everybody's going to spend it differently. We need to prioritize what the community needs.
Yeah, and I think, Herman, you actually just hit it on the head. We have not, as a commission, sat down with PBSO to negotiate the contract. We have allowed, which is an option, I think, I don't think we're required to do that, to have the mayor or the city manager negotiate with that. So what happens is they negotiate, they come back with a number, and it's take it or leave it. We need to start as a body the same way the school board does with the Classroom Teachers Association, right? We need to come as a body and negotiate with our counterpart rather than handing it off to someone who might not have the same values we have. I don't want us spending as much money as we are on public safety, quote unquote, public safety. And you know what, I think as you know, people use the public safety thing as kind of like a rhetorical shield. You don't want to cut public safety. Well, I guess the question is, do we need to spend all those dollars to keep the public safe? You know, at what point do we get diminishing returns on that money? And could we spend that money elsewhere and get, you know, positive outcomes? So there's George or excuse me, there's Jorge, there's Noam, and there's Greg next. And
Yeah, please.
George. or Jorge.
I want to start by saying that, sorry, it took a child to actually hit the right spot. She nailed it, because I support body cams, civil accountability, but it's true, that's not going to bring anybody back. And I'm sorry, Commissioner Robinson, but it feels a lot like you're tiptoeing around the idea of putting things on a contract. We have to do it. And I get it. I hear you. Wait, please. I heard you say that being a cop is stressful, and it is. It's a hard job to have for them and their families. Don't think I don't believe that. I strongly believe that. But being a cop is a choice. You know what's not being a choice? Being part of the Hispanic community, being African American, those things are not a choice. And if we're giving them the option of arresting or giving them a warning, that's an open road to racism. We have a lot of things we have to put on contract, and we have to be hard. And if we're not a majority and the other commissioners vote against it, well, we voted our conscience, and we have to hit hard, and we have to go for it, because she's afraid for her dad. We're afraid for our neighbors. I'm afraid for myself. I'm Hispanic. At least I pass. I have that privilege, but that doesn't take away the fear. And that's what we're seeing all over the country right now. And that's what gets me a little riled up. I really appreciate the position the two of you as commissioners take, but we need to be stronger. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Jorge. Herman, do you want to
And
address?
I'm good with putting as much as we can in the contract and make it workable. You know, there's too many lawyers in the country that will make it difficult.
Awesome. No?
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, I mean, I appreciate the idea of having this conversation to begin with, but I really, you know, you can always have these kinds of conversations and make them sort of a dog and pony show. And I know that's not your intention, and I know that's not where you want to go, but we got to be aware that could definitely happen here. If we just start talking about these micro issues rather than the bigger picture. Because there's this idea that somehow we need the police as much as the budget reflects, as if having a thriving city for all residents is only going to be facilitated by a police force, and it's not. I believe the opposite is true, actually. And so we've got to reduce the budget now, and obviously it's not up to the two of you only, but I mean, as far as community input, my input is to reduce the budget now and make sensible and practical steps for reallocating tax dollars for resources and services that are actually going to uplift people, especially marginalized communities. And that's not like that's not a radical idea. I mean, maybe it's a radical idea because it's a great idea, but it's not something that's like it's so extreme that it's like it shouldn't be considered. I mean, these are this 51% number, or 39% number for that matter, or 36%. It's the, I mean, if we cannot be tone deaf to what is being amplified in these last few weeks. I mean, when I say amplified, I mean, it's been said for forever, but it's being amplified right now, that these issues need to be dealt with in a much, much deeper fashion. If we're still 4 or 5 years ago, we were talking round and round about, I mean, the whole country, not you, but everyone was talking about body cam. Like, if this is the conversation that's still going on, as if that's going to solve the problem, then the conversation.
There's no silver bullet.
Yeah. No. First of all, thank you for participating. And what I'll say is, no, I don't think body-worn cameras are a panacea or a silver bullet, as Commissioner Robinson said. I get, and there are lots of like really deep issues that are cultural in nature and that are hard to detect as a part of, for example, a hiring process, right? Obviously, we need lots of very rigorous psychological screening, not just when folks are coming into the police department, but every year, as Marina said, we cannot afford to have desensitized police. And this whole bad apples thing. Yeah, I was watching Chris Rock talk about this. He was like, imagine if Southwest Airlines said, we 99% of our pilots are great. We just have a few bad apples. 99% of them love to land, but we got just a few bad apples who like to crash into the mountains. Like that absolutely cannot be the case with police. And so there are so many deep issues that have to be addressed. I guess, my thing is I feel that as a city commissioner, and I don't know how Commissioner Robinson feels, but I feel that my power is limited to things that I can put on paper. And I'm so focused on the contract because that is the only token of the existence of a relationship between this city as an institution and PBSO as an institution. And I feel that if we want to get certain things,
it's going to take the commission to sign the contract.
Yeah.
So
but I feel
I'm good with the contract. I'm good with certainly the measuring the budget differently, I think, than the way we do now.
Can I just throw everything in there though about and yes, and I really don't think that this whole conversation about bad apples, like, this is not about bad apples.
Correct.
I mean? Sure it is.
This is about an apple. No, this is about an apple cart that's not built right. Like the system is not set up to prevent these things from happening and to hold folks accountable when they do these things. I don't know, Noam, if that's the way you feel.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, maybe a little deeper. It depends on how you define like the system and what you're identifying as the system. But I also just want to make sure, because you all were having a conversation and it was probably impossible to follow the chat thread. But there was definitely a conversation among the people who are here at the meeting about setting up a I don't know what people called it, but like a community task force or something to be part of this conversation in a more active way, a more active and more ongoing way, to shape this kind of decision making. So I mean, it's going to come down to the 5 of you on the commission to make the decision on the dais, but creating this kind of forum and creating an opportunity for voices to be, to weigh in on a more thoughtful and long-term way, I think is going to be important as well.
I'm looking forward to more of them.
Greg, who has been waiting for a long time.
He's a patient guy.
Greg, you got to unmute yourself, buddy.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Thank you. First of all, both of you, thank you very much for putting this together tonight. I think it's been it's a good conversation. There's a lot more that has to be done. I think what's frustrating, if I were sitting in your shoes or any of the commissioner's shoes and the mayor's shoes, that you're into a contract that not only includes our city, but a group of other cities. And I think one of the things is can you guys, I don't know how you do it without working through sunshine laws, work with other communities at what you want on the next contract. because I think you're very limited to what you really can do to be effective. I agree the body cameras is one. I think one thing that's really, somebody brought it up, I read it in the paper the other day, the police union making campaign contributions to the sheriff. That should not be allowed. First of all, you don't want to put your officers under that pressure of saying, hey, we got to endorse our boss. You know, I mean, I never had people that work for me.
How about politicians getting campaign contributions from the sheriffs and which, that's a conflict of interest in itself. The firemen and police contribute to candidates.
What it led to was, and I forget the unlimited campaign contribution. It started with the fact that union dues were being given, but companies couldn't do it. Well, just knock them all off, and that takes care of that. But a couple of things, I don't know if you read the House today, U.S. House of Representatives has put together a bill that they want to put out. And I think it's something, there's things in there that you guys can endorse this, to make this voice heard, what's going on out there. And it's all about accountability, Mari. You mentioned that earlier, and it is really about accountability. Right now, there's just these immunity standards that the cops are held to a higher degree if you want to press charges to them. You have to show that it's willful racism before you can show that you were violated in that way. So it's changed to qualified immunity. The other thing is a local prosecutor should not be prosecuting the police. Because of the nature of their jobs, they have to work together. So it's the same thing, someone mentioned about cops, patrol, counting other cops accountable. This is the same thing with the prosecutors law. That's what came out of Ferguson, Missouri, when the Justice Department stepped in there. It was just too close. So we need to, and we also need to empower our Justice Department to look at these various departments where this is a problem. The final thing I just want to say, our police are having to take on a lot more than I think they ever thought they had to take on, and that is, the drug crisis that's going on in this country that's leading to, not only just the drug crisis itself, but the crimes associated with it as the cause. But the other thing is mental health. Go look at the jail. We did this locally before I moved down here. We found out that almost 50% of the Fairfax County jail at one point was housing mental, patients that, people were incarcerated, but it was a mental health issue that, that was there because we have no place else to put them.
Sheriff Bradshaw says that.
Oh, you should check it out because we have no place to put it. The mental health issue. It's the biggest driver of homelessness. When do you think this homelessness started? It started in the 70s, in the late 70s, early 80s, when we kicked them all out, when we kicked everyone out of the state hospitals. The Supreme Court, changed the laws on that. So anyway, those are my two.
An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, somebody said.
Yeah.
I think it was Ben Franklin, wasn't it?
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate everything, guys.
Thanks.
Well,
Thanks.
In terms of appreciation, staff has put this together and they're taking their time, and the city manager has allowed it. And I want to appreciate that. And to Commissioner Hardy, we're stepping out a little bit, and there may be, people are going to understand a little more how we think, which is sometimes a good thing, sometimes it's not. Anyhow.
Yeah. Look, this whole thing is I know that we're going to have a conversation on the broader dais, and I wanted to, again, like I said, know what's in your head, and I wanted you to know what's in mine, right? So
hold on a minute.
They might be listening.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So,
I'd like to say something.
Oh,
Ed DeVoe.
Sure. But there's a Ed. Okay, so Ed, hold on 1 second.
Hold on a minute.
Hold on.
I got Lexus on the phone.
Okay, so Ed, before you was a person named Dami and Shane Regan, and then you'll be next.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right. Dami.
Hi, this is Dami. Commissioner Hardy, I'm hearing you say that you don't want to be spending over 50% of the budget on the police, and yet it seems like y'all are the ones that have the power to change that, to spend the money on community social services. Like Herman, you're saying that you want to spend the budget on what the community needs. And what I'm hearing everyone say is that what we need are social services. We need mental health. We need services for addiction. So like, why aren't we spending our budget on what our community needs? Why are we giving this money to the police when the police aren't helping us? They're not helping our community, they're hurting our community. And I just don't understand it.
Dummy, we're in the minority. There's a reason why, we have a 5-member board. There are 2 of us here. And if I had a wand, the way that we spend money would be very different. And I can't speak for my colleague, but we don't, I don't want to get into that because we're trying to have a civil conversation, but there have been times when both Herman and me have brought forward issues that we felt mattered and we're just not heard. And so I agree with you, but
Sheriff
I'm 1 out of 5.
can prioritize his budget too.
Yeah. All right, then Shane Regan,
Yeah,
and
we
then
as the
and then
community
Ed.
feel like we are not being heard. And so, yeah.
I appreciate it. So Shane, and then Ed.
Yeah, hi, Commissioner Hardy and Robinson. So, I've spoken to a lot of people in the city, and a lot of people also, crime is really a high element. I mean, I personally have been broken into in my office, my house, my car. I mean, I don't think taking dollars away from the city at this moment with crime is a solution. We have a huge drug addiction problem in the city. There is 45 or 48% of the city that I believe is the Hispanic population, and most of them are great people. We never hear anyone talk from their part of the city where there is a lot of crime in the city, and I think that more than anything we need to work with the police force to help us decrease crime, the violent possibilities we have in the city and the drug issues we have in the city. If it's taking up 51% of the budget, maybe we should look at different ways that we can increase the income to the city and the way that the city earns money, as opposed to, which should decrease the proportion of the money we're spending on crime. I mean, if we can increase the way that the city earns money, then we can, the percentage of what we're spending on police would be down. I mean, we all know that the large problems, we don't have enough, businesses or taxes that are coming into the city. We should look at different ways to get income to help supply for the needs that we need to decrease an already, I want to say, jeopardized system with the police force is not a good thing.
I'd like to talk about how we measure the value of our sheriffs in terms of how we measure the expense and return of that much money. And I definitely want to be safe and everybody to be secure, but I'm not sure I don't know how we measure it. Our crime is up, and we need to prioritize to keep everybody safe. To cut the budget is an easy punch, but if until your house is broken into, the sheriffs aren't that important.
Well, I have some thoughts about that, but I want to get through these public comment. So Ed, and then Laurel Decker, and then Tammy.
Thank you for having this here. I'd like to say I think we're all off base here. Only because I say that because why are we here? We're here because you can take this problem and go all the way back to 1917, Houston, Texas, with 13 African Americans with hung up. You can all the way up to right now, George Floyd. You know, you gotta look at it for what it is. And I feel sorry this guy have a problem with the crime, his house been broken into. We're not here for that tonight. I feel sorry about the budget. We're not here for it tonight. We're here for because we have injustice against African Americans in this country.
I got her that, yes.
And other minorities. This is why we are here tonight. The other stuff, we're gonna put that on the back burner right now. And this is how we're gonna get this fixed. Until all the commissioners, and I applaud you and you two commissioners tonight for being here. To the mayors here with you and the other two commissioners and the city manager, that's a start. But you know why? Now at that stage, we don't have any division among us. This is not a Democrat, Republican, independent party. This is an American problem that's been going on for a long time. And if you think by some miracle this is going to go away, we haven't got started yet.
Right.
Now, we need to come together and make laws for everybody and hold people accountable of these laws. We start with our local people first, the commissioners. Then we move to the county commissioners. Then we move to the state, our state representative. Then we move to the Congress in Washington and the Senate. Everybody has to be on board to protect what we're fighting for. There is no division here. It's two things here. Nobody's on the fence tonight. Either you're with us or you're not.
Thank you.
And I appreciate that. Next is Laurel Decker, then Tammy Panza. Laurel?
Hi, Omari. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, hi. Thank you to you and Herman for doing this. You know, I think we can't depend on PBSO, you know, to do everything for us, but I feel like we can't depend on the commission to do everything for us either. Right now, there's this groundswell of anti-racism activity that's going on. We as citizens, we have to take advantage of this. And I believe that we need to decide what we want and how can we get what we want. So I've been focusing on policy changes that I want PBSO to make. I don't even know what PBSO policies are. I'm planning to get in touch with the captain who's in charge of training and find out, you know, what their training situation is, what of these policies they have in place, whether they're written, whether there's, what happens if you don't comply with them. I think that as citizens, we need to come together and approach PBSO holistically this way, instead of trying to leverage the contract. Not that the contract can't be leveraged for you know, a different level of change, but policy change is free. There's no cost to it.
Right.
So that's what I'm focusing on. I don't have a problem with body cameras. They're just one tool. They're not going to save us, but there's no reason not to have them and to have, you know, policy around it. If they turn it off, you know, they have to, you know, something happens. As far as legislation, there's only so much that the commission can do, because law enforcement is, I think most law enforcement regulations are put in place by the state, right? Or the county. Here's another thing, the PBSO is a county agency. I think we have a pretty democratic county commission. We should be approaching the county commission with some of the things that we want to in an organized way. So Kara talked about the budget. I know the budget pretty well. You know, if I want you to take money away from PBSO, or I want you to put more money over here for this, then I have to tell you where I want you to take the money from. This is the kind of organized approach that I think that we should take as citizens. We need to get together, decide what we want, and hand it to them and tell them what we want and how to get it. Let's help them out. That's all.
I appreciate that, Ms. Decker. Tammy Panza.
Hi there. Can everybody hear me okay?
Mhm.
Great. I wanted to say we are missing a whole opportunity. We've got a lot of people here. Someone mentioned that a lot of our people that are subjects of this topic aren't here and they don't engage and they don't represent. What can we do to get our people to engage more? PBSO has the programs where they engage the very young children at an elementary school level, that cops aren't bad and all of that. But I think that one of the most impressive times that I sat at a commission meeting was when someone sent their kid from Lake Worth High School and he participated, and you had a whole fleet of people that were saying, oh, we got to do this, we got to do this, and we got to do that. And then the kid popped up and says, well, we should do all these things. And it's wonderful that you're showing all the support, but how are the kids supposed to get there to do this thing that you're all talking about? And thank you so much for your support, but this isn't realistic. So the people that are feeling oppressed, who are not treated right, who don't take part. I mean, I say you talk about the 80-20 law, we're probably about the 99.999 and the 1% right now. You probably have 0.0001% of our population taking part in our city government. And there's 10,000 people or 20 or 30,000 people who don't even know their commissioner's name. When I came to Lake Worth, I did not know that I could go in to a commission meeting. I did not know they were open to the public. I just didn't pay attention to that. I worked, went home, slept, got up, worked again. So if we can engage our children, if you can maybe have a high school program where they send kids to our commission meetings to take part and realize that they can make a difference. We have people here who are saying, we should follow these laws and we shouldn't follow those laws, and those laws are good and those laws are bad. We shouldn't be deciding what laws should be followed or not. If they're bad laws, change them. That's your job. You know, you have so many people out there that are trying to make a difference, but they're just spinning their wheels. A lot of this meeting right here has been with good intent, but there's a lot of people spinning their wheels. What can we actually do to facilitate change? So if we start at a grassroots level, get our kids involved, to make people know that they have a voice. If the PBSO says to someone, oh, don't go down that street on a Friday night because there's lots of people with cash and they get it stolen all the time, you should just be there instead of telling people not to go there, and stop people from stealing from other people and having crime issues. You know, you have to engage all parts of the population. And I agree with the mental health issues. There's so many people who have mental health issues that should be addressed. There's another thing that you can do to engage the kids. You have the Explorer program, nowhere near Lake Worth for anybody to participate. So to actively participate as a child and grow up into a civic-minded person, you have to give people the opportunity and give them the knowledge to know that they can participate.
Thank you, Tammy. Okay, so Melissa, I see you have your hand up. You've spoken before. Can you give us?
Are we moving away from PBSO conversation to education and creating a task force?
I guess, you know, Herman, there are, I thought I had the, oh, it's in a word.
That would be the same conversation, Herman.
David. Here's my, and again, I want you to know that there's a list of stuff that I want in the contract. I don't want it wink, wink, nod, nod from the sheriff. I don't want, maybe we'll think about it. The contract is the only thing we have to leverage with this organization that is not really under our control. And so whether it's body worn cameras, whether it's, and I recognize that local governments, there are state statutes on marijuana possession and all these sorts of things, but just as there are federal statutes on marijuana use, medical or otherwise, that makes them federally illegal, states have decided, you know what? We're not going to spend our law enforcement resources on this stuff. And hey, FBI, if you want to come and arrest people for smoking weed, then you better devote your resources to doing it, because we're not going to do it. We're going to legalize this in Texas. I feel that same way with a lot of these low-level interactions. And so there are so many things, whether it's stop criminalizing these kind of, petty behaviors, or, whether it's
what else did you want to put in the contract besides, limiting the marijuana arrests?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's the not criminalizing these petty stuff. I got you. There's Melissa, there's body worn cameras. There's use of force. I only want officers basically to use, deadly force when it's like an imminent threat to their life or another person's life. Then I want them to have to warn the person. I mean, there's and I recognize that PBSO does require officers to warn the person before they use, deadly force. But I want all of these things in the contract. If PBSO decided to change their policies today, we'd be out of luck, right? So like all these things, the fact that they banned the chokehold, that they have all these policies, I want these things in our contract. And the other thing is, the whole community review board thing. I do not believe that officers should be investigating complaints about uses of force. That makes no sense to me, that an officer is investigating another officer. That needs to be people in the community looking at these cases, and they should have access to the, to crime scenes if need be. They should have this should be community oversight of police when it comes to those things. Those are the sorts of things that I want in the contract. I think I'm probably going to have a list before we have, a conversation with the broader commission, but I want those things in the contract. And by the way, you can't leverage a contract if you're not willing to walk away from it. And I love the deputies we have with PBSO, but these sorts of things are deal breakers. Like, if we can't get body cameras on the police, I'm sorry, we got to find another way to do that. And
I'm suggesting we do leverage with the other communities that have contracts.
Right, but and that's true. But so we need to leverage, in order for that to work, we need to leverage our contract, and they need to leverage their contracts, right? And it's all that we can control.
But all your changes suggested in all the other contracts, that's more pressure than what we're suggesting just in our contract.
That would be great. And I do think that we should, and I was on the phone with a mayor today. I won't say his name, but I was literally on the phone with a mayor today who's served by PBSO. And so I do believe that we should be leveraging the contract individually and with other cities. That's a smart thing to do. It's like creating a union of cities.
And I'm saying there would be more, unified is more influential than individually.
Right. Simultaneously, though, I don't think we can wait on them. I don't, like if we, and Melissa, I got you. I really want to have this conversation with Herman before we get to the broader commission. I think we should reach out to them.
Hopefully we'll be able to have it on the dais. I think that's where it should be had.
Sure. It could have been.
But we can do this again, as the hour gets late. Can we go to topic 2?
Sure. There's 3 more public there's Melissa, Paul Carson, and Anthony Segridge, and then we'll move on.
Okay.
Melissa.
I mean, I just want to mention that you keep talking about contracts and leverage, and your biggest force of leverage is mobilizing your community, because hello, Minneapolis defunded the police in under a week's time. Do you think that a county commissioner system did that all in and of itself? No, the community made that happen. So, I mean, we've been chatting, and I don't know if you guys can see the chat or not, but you have at least 10 people here, myself included, saying that they are willing to be a part of a community-based organization to discuss these very topics, and you guys are talking about an agenda of what you want and what you don't want. Has anybody asked the public at large what they want? Because isn't that kind of,
Yeah.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that what it's about?
Yeah,
You're
look,
making
we don't,
decisions about what you want in and out of a contract, but you didn't even ask us. Or
okay,
did you?
so
I missed
hold
that.
on 1 second. The purpose of this conversation is because Herman and I cannot talk in private. We have to have this conversation in public. There will be a discussion with 5 people on a dais, in this case, a virtual dais. And that's where the vote will be made, okay? And what I do know is, yes, we want public input. That's why there was a section. I mean, if this wasn't supposed to be a back and forth, there was a section in this meeting for public comment after we worked our way through these issues so that we can hear from you. And I get that there's a groundswell of support for change. What I also know is that the sheriff is a constitutional officer. There are 7 other constitutional officers who, with all due respect to them, have a real hard time getting what they want out of the lone constitutional officer. And we need as much, we want your backup, Melissa, and every single other person here, we want your backup. But I guess the purpose of this meeting was so that Herman and I could get our stuff straight before we had a broader discussion with the commission, because I feel, and I don't want to cast any aspersions, I feel that Herman burns with a desire to fix this problem, like you wouldn't believe. And I feel I burn with a desire to fix this problem. And I trust Herman that he really, really wants to do that. And I do not have that same trust elsewhere. And so I don't want to go into a meeting not knowing what's on Herman's mind, given that I feel he's as serious about this as I am. That was why I called the meeting. And I'm really happy that y'all are here. But I wanted to know what was in Herman's head, as I wanted to know what's in your head. So,
Larry, with all due respect.
Who is this? Hold on 1 second. Who is this?
David Savage.
Yeah. You have just found out that there are at least 10 people who agree with you. You know, it's not just you and Herman. As much as you would like this to be whatever political reasoning that is, there are a lot of people who agree this needs to be discussed on the dais.
I don't.
We live in a democracy, representative republic government, and
this is how this works. This is brilliant. This is how this works. Yeah. Okay. I'm done.
Paul Carson and then Anthony Segridge.
Hello, everybody. I just wanted to bring up some points. I'm a criminal defense attorney, and I deal with PBSO and the West Palm Beach Police Department and all the departments in the county. The PBSO is the only one that doesn't have the body cams. So if we get a case that comes in and we know that the arresting agency is PBSO, we know that there's no body cams. Now, everyone says that you can turn them off and they don't do anything. Now, I agree that they're not perfect. I do say, though, that they do change things. And I think it's a cultural change to have that on their back. And not everybody remembers. So it's not easy to delete the footage. It's very easy to turn it on and off, whether you're recording or something or not. And you'll hear officers say to each other while it's on, saying, "Hey, are you on?" And they'll reach and they'll grab it and they'll turn it off. And then at least at that point, you know that they are purposefully not recording themselves. I do think, though, that there's might be an issue with us saying, well, we want to pay you less, but also we want you to spend all this money on this new technology and outfit it on every single officer. I think that's going to be a tough negotiation. And I know that you guys have talked about getting together. I think a memorandum of understanding with the other cities. There was a
issue.
Yeah, so there was a protest today at noon in front of the courthouse with all of the public defenders and Office of Regional Counsel and a lot of the court staff people. And I think that West Palm Beach would be pretty apt to jump on that right now. some sort of joint statement. And that joint statement, while it might not have a legal effect on the contract, would certainly, and I don't know, do you guys negotiate your contracts all at the same time, or is it?
Paul, do you know if West Palm, I should know, if West Palm has body cams on
West
their?
Palm Police Department does have body cams, yes.
They have a whole pilot program. They studied them. They work.
Yeah, no, and they're good. And, you know, and in Riviera, they're used extensively, and they're, you know, now they're not always helpful to a criminal defense attorney, but they're always helpful if you want to know what's going on. But I think right now is a good time for that memorandum of understanding, because you can get that done now. Well, you might not be able to renegotiate the contract with all of these other organizations right now, but that can be done now, so that when the police department, when Rick Bradshaw is looking at the things he needs to do, he can look at that memorandum of understanding and say, well, these are the things that they're going to want when negotiations do come up for those other cities. And there's one thing that I wanted to talk about, and I'm trying to be quick. I'm sorry for talking so fast. You talked about we have to be willing to walk away. Is that even a possibility right now for the city to have a Lake Worth Beach Police Department?
Yeah, so that's interesting. So let me address one thing. The first thing is, while there are multiple cities that have contracts with PBSO, they're separate contracts, and
Right.
they run on their own course. So we don't have to negotiate with the other cities. Although I
Sure.
do think it would be good to work with them to kind of collectively leverage our contracts, right? But on the, is it even an option? My understanding is that there's a state statute that says the sheriff has to provide police services in the event that we were walk away for a period of time. Now, the sheriff gets to define kind of the level of service, right? And that's kind of an issue. And if we felt that you know, we weren't getting serious levels of service that are like reasonable, right? In the event that we were to try to transition away, then there would probably be some litigation. I'm unsure how that would work in detail. But you know, look, you know, you don't negotiate with someone if you're not willing to walk away from the table. That's just like the key thing about, you know, negotiating. And so for me, these things are non-negotiable, right? Like
But for Rick Bradshaw, does he, because if I'm
Right.
Rick Bradshaw, I'm thinking
Right.
Lake Worth doesn't have the money. They can't create their own police department. Even with, you know, 51% of their budget, they can't provide what I'm providing them for themselves.
Sure.
You know, they've got helicopters and, you know, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Is there a reasonable alternative?
I thought that was a rhetorical question.
Hold.
Why are we discussing?
David, you spoke. That's it for you.
So here's what I know. If we can't, what does leveraging the contract mean if we can't actually walk away from it? And if
Right.
we have put ourselves in a situation where we cannot actually police our own city to some degree, then shame on every single person who sat on this dais since 2010. Like, we could not make ourselves so dependent on one person that we can't do this job, which, by the way, we had done for 80 years or however long before, right? And so, you know, it makes for an uncomfortable conversation. But if we're saying that the choice is between having PBSO without having any systems in place for accountability, like body worn cameras, like community review boards, like, you know, different training, like all these things, or, you know, I mean, like I can't accept that, you know. So look, I'm just one vote. So
Right, and I agree with you. Last, I would say that some people also brought up the prosecution of police, and that's one area, even as a defense attorney, I have to give Dave Ehrenberg a little bit of credit that they've been, at least for the big, you know, publicized cases, they are going after police that are, you know, are killing people. Now, are they doing that for police misconduct that's not rising to the level of the newspaper? No, they're not doing that. Those cops aren't even getting reprimanded. So, I mean,
That needs to change.
Which is why we can't have police officers investigating police officers, in my view. Like that, there's no universe in which that should be acceptable. I get it's a hard job. Everything's a hard job. You can't have police officers investigating police officers. There's someone, Anthony Segrich, who I don't, Paul, thank you. Anthony Segrich.
Hi, thank you, Omari and Herman, for having this.
My first kind of comment and question touches closely to something that Paul brought up and something you said, Omari, about negotiating a contract and being willing to walk away, right? And the only way you could be willing to walk away is if you have a plan B going into the contract negotiations. Otherwise, you have nothing, right? So when is this contract up? When are the negotiations happening? And when will you present to us your plan B?
Okay, so my understanding is that the contract's up every May 31st, but we tend to renew the contract in August. I mean, I have however many of the renewals that there are here, and I have the contract as well. So it's every, I think, May 31st. And then typically we get some kind of renewal back in August. And by the way, in those 3 months in which we don't have a contract, it would seem that policing continues in the city. So yeah, and I guess, you are totally right, Anthony. I think I deserve some fault for not insisting. I got elected 3 years ago and I was told this is the way it happens. The mayor and the city manager, they negotiate this and then it comes forward and boom, 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 boom. And what I should have done was say, hold up, I'm a duly elected official as well. And I absolutely need to have a say in how this because I have some concerns, which I have always had. And as I've told, folks in the community who called me, the first thing I did when I got elected was print out a binder, like binders worth of stuff on body worn cameras. But I was told also before I got elected by a fellow commissioner that don't even try it, basically. I'm not going to name the commissioner, but I was told don't even try it. This is not something the sheriff's wants, don't even do it. So I agree, we need a plan B. We don't have a plan B, but if we're not developing one over the next year, then shame on us. And, I don't, hey. So.
So following up to that, and that's a valid answer, appreciate your honesty saying that we don't have a plan B for this. And if we can get one in a year, that's a great step forward, I think, because that'll help you guys with negotiation. It'll help push some of these issues and some of the things and requests that we have, because without that, we really don't have any leverage, right? Because what's your choice? Walk away and do nothing? No one's going to do that. The second part is in participating in some of the other meetings, it was interesting. People brought up some incidents that required PBSO intervention. Things like parties, drugs on the street, people being high in the street down on Federal. And it seemed like the commission was kind of shocked a little bit that people in the community were saying that PBSO basically just turned a blind eye to it or refused to make an arrest or do something. And the comment was kind of made, well, we need to hold them accountable. What mechanism does the commission have or the city of Lake Worth have to actually hold them accountable when things like this are brought to your attention?
None, to my knowledge.
Well, can I suggest that if the community is upset with their responding officers and administration, they have a boss, and there are consequences to performance or underperforming. So if we make the bosses aware, there's a possibility of change.
Mm-hmm. Well,
the consequences of not performing.
I think just leaving it, understanding what a good plan B would be, I think would give this city a lot more power to push the agenda that the people of the city want. Versus
let's make plan A the best.
Going in there blind with that. So thank you.
All right. Herman, there are some people who Kim Stokes and Nick. Can we move to Herman's?
No, just quickly. Okay. How many are there?
It's two. Can we do like a minute each? Would that be okay?
We don't know what they're going to say.
Okay.
I can do a minute.
Okay, Kim, go ahead.
I can do a minute. I'm just trying to follow along with everything here. And so when we're negotiating with the sheriff, is it purely on? It would be nice, and not going to happen on this call, but maybe a follow-up call to really understand our contract with them, our leverage, what's on the table. So I know in the comments, we've heard budget a lot. So are we just saying, wear body cams, hold your police accountable, or we're out? Or can we say, look, we are going to form our own groups that are going to tackle some of these things and put money into our community. So we're going to reduce your budget from 51% of our, our budget to like 45, and we're going to take that 6% and we're going to invest it in these other areas. Like, is that something that is on the table, or is it just this list of demands? So I think this is like a huge conversation that there's a lot of different things that, like, different avenues you can go down when you're talking about what we're trying to do with the police here. I would like to see it not just be a list of like 3 or 4 demands, and to really think more comprehensively about the problems that we have. It's like I put in the comment before, my feeling whenever I see any response is like, oh, there's prostitutes. Let's all show up on court every Saturday morning and make sure prostitutes get the maximum freaking sentence.
It bothers the heck. I'm sorry, but it does. But first of all, it bothers the heck. And I get that street level prostitution is a nuisance when it is occurring in your backyard, but these are like women who are making decisions about their body. And I wish that there was a better way for them to be able to do that without creating these social problems of walking out of your house and seeing things you don't want to see.
Yeah,
I wish that there was as much energy into figuring out a way to not criminalize these women, and also to not have this issue of seeing stuff we don't want to see, as opposed to just showing up to court and putting people in jail for BS or making sure anyway.
It's everywhere in our city, Omar. Everywhere I look, every neighborhood association meeting I went to, we want a certain block of our community feel comfortable and to vote for people. So we make them feel good. Like, oh yeah, there's crime. Let's add a couple more cops, or let's add more code enforcement officers, or we're gonna, there's like this huge drug epidemic. We're gonna crack down on the sober houses, and we're gonna make sure that prostitutes get the maximum sentencing.
What are we here for?
Message across the board.
We're losing the message. What are we here for?
It needs to change the whole thing. So we can talk about body cams for police officers, but the whole message, everything I hear every time is this: we got to crack down, we got to crack down, we got to crack down. There's no love, there's no community, there's no, like, we're all in this together. It's
Prevention,
yes, yeah, all of it is missing. And I don't know if it's just because it brings people to the polls and like I don't know, but it's what I hear, and it's very infuriating. That's my minute. This isn't going to be solved right now. I just needed to
Look,
put that up there.
I am guilty of, I'm guilty of what you're talking about, but it's something I don't think that approach is a legit approach anymore. And I'm like literally ashamed of the positions that I've held, and of the things that I said, like the issues, those sorts of things should, like, the solution is not to criminalize more stuff. And that, I think, is an issue, Ed, that is a part of why we're here, because Eric Gardner had an interaction with a police officer he never should have had. He was choked because the police officer thought it was his duty to do whatever he needed to do to stop him from selling cigarettes. Like, who cares? Is my point. And so, Nick, I don't know.
I think he would choke because of 9 minutes. Then he could have got up off him. The 1 minute was just too long. It just.
Yeah.
We're here on the racial issue. Let's talk about the racial issue. What are we going to do? Let's not move. Herman, please. Let's not lose sight of what we're here for.
Get there, Ed. I'm trying to get there after we.
I'm listening.
Nick is the last person to speak.
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you guys hear?
Yes,
okay.
Nick.
Yeah. Anyways, I want to say I appreciate a lot of things that you're both saying, Omari and Herman, and I know there's a lot of things that are out of your control as far as PBSO, but there's things that are in your control, like sending the PBSO to go along with code enforcement, and this thing called Operation Full Court Press. I'm going to post a link in the chat, but basically it was a targeted code enforcement campaign where PBSO worked hand in glove with code, and that's over policing. They don't need to be there with their bulletproof vests and their guns addressing code violations. And there was an article that came out where they quoted numerous people from the south side of Lake Worth who felt like, they were being, it was like a war zone. The police were harassing them. And so, I sense with you, Omari, maybe you're reflected on some of that, but I mean,
you both did that. You both, that's that kind of broken windows policing kind of mentality, and it's equating poverty with criminality. And that's a big problem I see in Lake Worth, you know, and the police, the PBSO, they kind of treat people in the poor neighborhoods like cattle, you know, like they really do. And they do things like the other day they were driving down D Street 90 miles an hour, blowing through all the stop signs. You know, there's all these families out, everybody saw it. If anyone here did that, we'd be arrested, we'd be in jail, you know, but they kind of see these neighborhoods as like these crime-ridden, you know, hot zones or something. And that's a big part of the problem. So sending them out with code to do civilian things like, you know, look for code violations is a part of the problem. And that's something that you both have control over. That has nothing to do with the budget or anything like that. So I'd like to see that change.
Nick, I appreciate it.
Sheriffs with that much authority sometimes have the ability to incite, escalate, and that's part of training.
And Nick, you know, I'm rethinking everything is, you know, what I'll say. And, you know, I don't disagree with you that we should probably be working to minimize the interactions that folk have with the police about stuff that that doesn't require somebody with a gun showing up, because those little interactions turn into big interactions, as we've seen, you know, before, whether it's Philando Castile or whether it's Eric Gardner or whether it's, you know, the police going after a guy over a single $20 bill and, like Ed said, put his knee on his neck, which is also a racial issue. But I think part of the issue is every time someone has an interaction with an officer, there's the potential for those prejudices to kick in the way that interaction plays out. And so if we reduce interactions over low-level stuff, we reduce opportunities for racial prejudice to manifest itself in these interactions. And so, but that doesn't mean that you don't pursue a race-specific issue by addressing unconscious bias and all these. So there's so many things. I think that's why this discussion is so freighted, is because there are so many different things to tackle, and it's hard to do with two commissioners in a meeting like this. But Herman's been waiting for a long time to get to his issue. Herman, you want to talk about education and the creation of the task force, composition, task, timeframes for deliverables, recommendations, etc.
Well, no, the heading is racial equality. And, you know, how did that sheriff in Minneapolis get to the point where he had no regard for anybody else's life? He grew up somewhere with parents and an education and a society that gave him the sense that that person's life was worthless. I don't know who's going to fix that, but I think it's on us all. And education is a big part of it. And I'm astounded. Tulsa, Oklahoma had a massacre of people in 1921. They now have a mayor that wasn't aware of an event like that in his city. If we had colored only on maps in Lake Worth and in the county in 20 years ago, if you know, we have systemic racism we aren't aware of. We behave because we've allowed society to accept it, and that's all. I don't know if there's any way that we can legislate individual behavior, but we cannot allow, and the sheriffs are just a part of this racist behavior in our country. And when I don't want to start at the very top, but we have leaders in our country that incite, just like the patrol officer on the street, and it goes from everywhere in between. So we need to stop that. And when you see it happening, do something. Don't accept it. the schools, we have school kids. I didn't go to school with a cop in our school. I think they're very important in how kids are treated, and I would hope that they're all treated the same. The school board allows racial discrimination by their budget. If we want to talk about budgets, let's talk about the education budget, which incites systemic racism. Because if we had every kid in the country with the same expectation and the same education, we wouldn't have a racial problem, I believe. So yeah, the school board needs to take a lot of responsibility, as much as the PBSO. And with that said, I would like to talk about moving on to setting up a task force from our commission to address what we're going to do about it. And I don't want to talk about how we're going to do it. I want to talk about how this task force is going to be set up and the expectation of the task force, not get into what the conversation that we had tonight. And I'm hoping to have that on the 16th, and it can be pretty succinct in terms of establishing a task force. How many people are going to be on it? Are we going to allow a 7-year-old on it? I'd like to hear from the honesty of a 7-year-old. I'd like to hear from all parts of our society. And I hope it doesn't take too long, and I hope it's not too divisive. But it's time. Thank you. I'm done.
I appreciate that, Herman. I'm not against the idea of a task force if commissioners can participate on it as members.
We'll decide that.
What do you? Well,
okay.
I don't want to delegate my
yeah.
involvement in this matter to anybody.
Well, so is it going to be a group of 20 people?
Yeah, I mean, it could be a group of 20, or it could be a group of, but my feeling is, I think you're very right in that you want to bring people who see different sides of this thing together in the same place with some equality, so that they could kind of talk it out and figure it out together. But my concern, and I'm glad that in this agenda here, you talked about time frame for deliverables and recommendations. My concern is with these task force, concepts is that, you send it to a task force and then everything gets watered down and nothing happens. Right. And so I would love for there to be a task force. I just want to know that by a certain date, the task force is coming back with some stuff. And then there's the risk. There's the risk that the same politics that exist on the commission show up in the task force. And so, you've seen, a lot of times, for example, with charter review boards in other cities, where someone wants a charter review board, you get a charter review board, but the way that the review board is made up, it's the same composition as the commission, right? So the ideas that you want the review board to come up with, they don't come up with. Then they come back to the commission, they say, oh, well, the charter review board didn't come up with this recommendation that you said. And so, it must not be something that the commission that we, should do. So I'm all for a task force. I just want to participate. I want there to be equal participation among committees.
I think there should be room for 5 commissioners, and selected on an agency basis or on a demographic purpose, not individually appointed by commissioners.
Agreed.
Well, that's if that's possible. I don't know.
No,
we can have somebody from the school board, have somebody from PBSO,
have someone from the Guatemalan Mind Center for the children, the churches. Yeah. I agree with that. The school board has a similar way for how their advisory boundary committee is made up. You have to have one representative from the Haitian American community as defined by XYZ representatives, one person from the urban league, one person from the, right? And so that way you make sure you get a board that's not just people who are appointed by this member or that member, but from like the actual community.
Let's keep politics out of it as much as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, I can get on board with the task force, Herman. If you want a task force to come out of a commission, I can get on board with that.
How,
And
who's going to create it if we don't? I mean, you know, if we don't, who then who?
Right.
And we have a sheriff's budget coming up in August, September. We have a budget of our own coming up. Tick-tock.
So by when would you want such a task force to be done?
Well,
working.
I'm not sure that it has to be sunsetted,
Okay.
but it has to be set up sooner rather than later. And we're going to talk about it on the 16th, whether
When do you
anybody
want
likes it or not.
stuff back from the task force, I guess is the question.
I'm sorry?
When do you want suggestions, recommendations back from the task force?
Well, there'll be degrees of seriousness that have to be considered. Quite frankly, I think the simplicity of deciding on a body cam can be quicker than addressing some aspects of education. You know, are we going to teach more racial systemic racism? We teach about diversity and ethnic differences. We need to teach at some point in our system how people behave without even being aware of their consequences of their behavior.
Okay, but Herman, I guess here's my fear with the task force. The issues go to the task force dithers and does nothing, and momentum is lost, right? And so I'm okay with the task force if I'm certain that it's like a 60-day task force that meets twice a week or once a week, right? And comes back with, in 60 days, commission, the task force recommends that you guys do A, B, C, D, E, and that the task force can figure that out in 60 days. And by the way, it's not as if these issues that we're studying here are like new issues. There are at least half a dozen groups that I can think of off the top of my head that have studied these issues before us, whether it's Campaign Zero, Dream Defenders, there are all these organizations that have done this before. We don't need to spend a year in a task force, because I think at that point, the task force becomes a tool for inaction. So my key question is when should something come from the task force to the commission for action?
Well, they can report every 60 days.
So
and we're going to be part of it. So it's on us. We can be a super voting block. There are 5 members that need to be held responsible. We get elected. If we don't produce, the consequences of the people being appointed are less than.
Sure, but I get it, Herman. My point is, there's a task force that we have already, and it's a city commission, right? And we're empowered already to make. But if we're going to use some other mechanism, let's make sure that the mechanism actually results in something. And unless you have a deadline, it could be unending. So there needs to be a day where this thing starts and a day where it stops. Otherwise, I can't get behind a task force, because I feel like it's just us, like another commission from Congress. Let's have a commission on this,
Well, if we don't behave like Congress, maybe we will get something done. So, and if we don't set up something to address systemic racism, you know, I can't imagine that. And I appreciate, I like deadlines, I like production, I like consequences. I think maybe it would be fair if we do decide to set up a task force to have them weigh in on what their abilities are to, you know, to do that. I'm good with deadlines, but there are going to be topics from this task force that will have different levels of time. Geez, I hope you're not against the task force.
I'm not against the task force, provided that it has a very clearly defined mission and a very clear timeline along which to act. Because if it doesn't, it's just going to, you know, it's going to turn into a morass. And so
it's difficult to say how smart you are, you know, and you know, if I mean, seriously, we set up a task force to eliminate systemic racism and call it, you know, that when do you judge that as complete?
I'm not saying that the task force has to be there through the completion of the policy's implementation, for example. But the purpose of at least for me, I guess the purpose of the task force would be to involve the community and different stakeholders as we decide what policies to enact. And once you make that decision, that implementing that should not be the you know, that's our job. We get paid to pass ordinances and to do that. But this task force should be to gather information, gather the viewpoints of different stakeholders, and to propose solutions to the lawmaking body in the city, which is the city commission, that the city commission can then decide on. And at that point,
well, let's make it for 12 months. And you know, I don't know what you're asking for, because I know there's no absolute clear solution.
90 days. I think is, and you know, the Obama pledge, which I thought I don't.
Yeah, me too. But yes, all right, I'm good with 90 days. That goes over the summer. I think that's a pretty hasty timeline. But if we need to continue it, then we'll decide at that time. 90 days. Now, what else can we ask the other commissioners to approve?
Well,
a limit of how
ahead.
many? A limit of how many people?
Well, I'm thinking, and I was just writing this down. There are 5 of us on the dais. I think we need someone from PBSO. I think we need someone, folks from the community. And you know, the 2 groups that came up, you know, to my mind were the Guatemalan Mayan Center for the children. I definitely think that someone,
the school board,
exactly the school board, or how about both members of the school board that represent the city, because we have 2, Erica Whitfield and Dr. Robinson. So if it's right now 5 commissioners, 1 rep from PBSO, school board. That's 2. So far, we're up to 8.
Can you add some race and equity experts, like someone from the Race and Equity Institute that is a trained?
Yeah, we're getting there. We got someone from the Guatemalan Mayan community.
Sorry to interject. I just feel like we need someone who has the experience and know-how to talk about race and equity. So I know the Race and Equity Institute is an incredible organization.
I've been there. You know, the lady who brought those ideas to Palm Beach County, Dr. Robinson, I was on the phone with her late last night, talking about topics like this. So
maybe our other commissioners might have other input. Can we just say, let's open it up. Let's limit it to 20 people. I know that's a lot, but we've had 50 here tonight and a lot of good input.
Who's the chair of the, and so I'm thinking, as Shauna said, I think someone who's an expert in race and equity should chair the commission. and not one of us.
As long as they are focused on our community.
Sure, sure, yeah.
And what we can do as a community.
Any other, I mean, I think someone from housing should be involved. That's just so much of this has to do with housing, neighborhoods, where people live, how they live. I think that's important, and I would like to have some and maybe someone from legal aid also. They have extensive experience with folks in our community. Maybe someone from the public defender's office.
How about real estate and banking?
Sure.
And
we're talking about housing.
We're not going to affect prison reform now, but maybe we'll talk about not arresting marijuana people, but the fact that our judicial system says, how about somebody from the courts? Because PBSO is in constant conflict with the courts, with bad people being arrested, and then again tomorrow. Because of the courts.
There's a judge or a former judge who's no longer on the bench.
Perfect.
Who I don't know him, but I have a lot of respect for him. I don't want to call his name, but I'll see if I can find his information.
Well, we'll ask him to volunteer. Good. Are we limiting it to is that 20 people or what?
So we got 5 commissioners, 1 PBSO person. We got 2 people from the school.
You're saying 30?
Guys, this is so ridiculous. You're gonna have 5 commissioners who already have authority to make decisions, plus 2 people from the sheriff's department. Like, you have all these members of the public who are telling you they're upset and want to be engaged, and a 20-person task force is pretty unwieldy. Let's be honest.
I agree.
That's a lot.
So Kara, I have a job that I was elected to do. And I want to do that job because I think this is important, and I'm not willing to outsource this job to a damn soul. I want to have a say. Try to remember what it was like before you were a commissioner. Just try to tap in. Kara.
We're looking for recommendations.
Kara, I get it. Kara,
unless you have all the answers, Kara, I want to hear from other people.
Yeah, well, Kara, Kara, all I'm saying is Commissioner Omari Hardy, the second Black person to have ever sat on the dais, wants to have a say in what comes out of this daggone task force. And so the idea that we can't have the commissioners participate on it, I can't back that, period. I can't back it.
Okay, well, then you be on it. Omari, you're doing a great job. But to have all 5 commissioners is what you guys are talking about. When the approval has to come back to the commission for final input anyway.
You just got done saying that 5 people are responsible, and then you only want 1 person on the board.
I cannot say that I should have a place on that task force and then talk to the other 4 and say, but no, y'all can't be on there. The only way I get on that task force is if I at least extend the offer to the other 4 members of the commission.
No, apparently the only reason you're going to be in that task force is because you're Black. Jesus, are we talking about systemic racism or what?
Look, Cheryl, I see you.
You get my point?
I get it, but no. So look, what equity does not mean, Herman, is color blindness. Yes, I'm Black, and the idea that there should be someone on the commission because they're a skin color seemingly is unequal treatment. But it seems to make a lot of sense because a Black person has experiences that other persons don't have. And so, and personally, I think there's a problem with the fact that, West Palm Beach had 3 people on the dais who were Black at the same time. We haven't had 3 in the city's history. That's an issue, but that's neither here nor there. So far, this started with a question about how many people are on it. We got 5 commissioners, 1 PBS officer, that's 6. 2 people from the school board, that's 8. Guatemalan Mayan Center, 9. For the children, 10, a race and equity expert, 11, some combination or maybe all of someone from legal aid, someone with a background in housing, a public defender, and a state attorney. And so that gets us to, I think, what is that, 15? And there's a sober home task force with just as many people on it, and that task force seems to have worked just fine over the past few years.
I think what you guys are doing is really good, but if I were you, this is what I would do. This incident happened 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And emotions are still raw and running high. And
Ahmad was married 3 months ago.
Hey,
Sorry.
Dang it.
Ed, can't hear you.
I think he's, well, if he comes back, then anyway. Herman, look, I'm for the task force. I just wanted to have a deadline. I wanted to have a very specific job. I don't want it to be all over the place because then it can't do the job quickly. I wanted to focus on a thing. Like, in this case, we're talking about how police and citizens work together, right? And so I wanted to be focused on that. And, I want to participate. Those are my 3 asks that I need to support.
Good.
That I do.
But I also want the educational system and their budget to change and have equal, and we don't even want to talk about the inequities of income that generate a huge disparity of looking at different people.
I agree, but I don't know if that's the subject for this particular task force to tackle in 90 days. I think
I thought the task force was to talk about systemic racism.
But we can't have a task force on the whole topic. There's systemic racism in policing, education, health, housing, banking. We cannot do that. Now that is unwieldy. I think in 90 days, we can look at racial equity in policing, but we cannot do the whole thing at the same time.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what the others think. I mean, I hate to, I'm not saying this is a 400-year-old problem, and we're going to fix it in 90 days.
No, we can't. But that's what I'm saying. We can't fix it in 90 days. But we can examine a slice of this problem that has already been sliced and diced and examined by a lot of people. We don't have to recreate the wheel when it comes to police reform. We can examine this in intensive work over 90 days.
Sheriffs aren't the target.
I'm sorry?
Sheriffs has to be recognized that they're only part of the problem.
That's true, but we can't handle the whole problem at the same time. That's all I'm saying. I agree with you.
Let's
on housing
task force. Let's
but
leave the task force as how we're going to address it.
How about this, Herman? How about we create a task force on the broad topic of racial equity, but we give them a 3-month assignment on policing reform, and they do that intensive work over a 90-day period. They come back with recommendations. When that 90-day period is over, they go to the next topic, but they cannot tackle all topics at the same time. Nor can we give them a single deadline for all the topics. Let's take it a slice at a time. If you want to have a task force that doesn't sunset, cool, but let's take it one slice at a time. What do you think about that?
That's a good step forward. I'm interested in the budget for the sheriff coming up in September. So that would be a good approach to.
That'd be 90 days.
Yeah.
That'd be 90 days. So Herman, I just want to make sure here. I'm going to support a task force, but my asks are, I want to be able to participate as a commissioner. There needs to be representation across the broader community. Cool. There needs to be a deadline for how they handle this slice of the problem, this policing issue.
We can ask them for their recommendations on the PBSO in 90 days.
It needs to be in the ordinance.
I don't want to stifle anybody on the task force from talking about or addressing or any ideas on systemic racism.
Cool. But can we say that they should take it one slice at a time and not try to eat the whole cake at the same time?
No, I think we're talking about mature people that can look at the overall picture too. At the
Herman,
same time.
I hope we need to be able, but we need to give them a clear job that says, first 90 days, y'all gonna tackle this right here. Then when you guys are done with this, next 90 days, you're gonna tackle issue B and so on. But we can't have them tackling all the issues otherwise there's gonna be no focus.
Well, the focus is if they can come up with a recommendation in 2 weeks,
Sure.
let's give them, let's turn them loose a little bit and let them have an expectation that they have to come back with a recommendation to PBSO for the budget in 90 days, along with anything else that they can think of to lessen racism
in policing.
Well, I said 90 days for the recommendation for PBSO.
Right. And during those 90 days, they shouldn't be talking about anything else because they got a hard job to do during those 90 days.
They may amaze us.
Okay, how about this? So you're saying that if they finish that task early, they should be able to move on to something else?
Yes.
Okay, so how about this? So all right, so we create a task force, however it's composed. They're given a series of tasks, but policing reform is first. They're given a maximum time in which to complete the task, but if they complete it early and send us recommendations back, then they can move on to another slice of the racial inequity pie. But not before that.
Flagpole.
Say what?
We'll run it up the flagpole, as they say in the Army. We have 3 other people to consider.
Sure. We can't control. All I'm saying is you have an idea. I want us to be on as much of the same page as possible so that when we go there, we're not 1 and 1, we're 2. That's what this is transparently about.
Yes.
Okay. So if you have an idea for a task force, I'm telling you what I need out of it in order to support it when this goes to the broader commission.
I'm looking forward to the public being aware of some of the other topics that we have to tackle and our conversations that aren't on the dais, that are in the sunshine. We don't break the sunshine law.
Of course, like we talk about racism all the time, but what I'm saying, Herman, is that I don't want to go to the commission meeting and not be with you and vice versa, because we're done. If that's the case, we're done. So we need to get on the same page before Tuesday. If that means we have another one of these, then that's cool.
Yeah,
but we need to get on the same page.
Going into Tuesday's meeting, it's a simple question. Do we want to establish a task force? Yes or no?
I'm for that if it's I can't be for establishing any task force. I need to make sure that what I'm supporting will result in stuff happening. That's what I want.
Good luck with that. I mean, seriously, are you telling me that legislators such as we are, the little bit that we can do, we can get something done? I'm not.
I think we can. I think we can.
I do too, but I can't guarantee it.
We can set it up though to increase the chances that something gets done.
I'm for that.
Okay. Well, I don't. Go ahead.
Well,
I don't think we have anything else to do.
We've been at it and it's been great. I love legitimate debate and discussion and input.
Yeah. I need some of what Cheryl is having right now.
I know, and Southbound Park seems to be the refreshment capital of, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
We've talked about a little bit of education. We talked about this task force, which ain't easy. And we've had public comment. Is there?
Cheryl, is your hand still up?
I just wanted to say one last thing because Herman, I don't know if you're reading the chat, but just a suggestion that you guys presented that Omari, as he said, is, you know, being in a historic position as one of the few Black people who served on the commission, chairs the task force, and then each commissioner can appoint a certain number of people. And you guys say you have a certain categories you're trying to fill that they aspire to fill, but something like that. So commissioners get to participate without the whole task force being kind of front loaded with 5 elected officials.
But you started off your comment with you don't need a task force because we have 5 commissioners that can do something.
No, I said what I said was, well, I don't agree with the task force, but I'm being amiable. What I said was that I didn't think you should have all 5 commissioners on the task force because then you get into sunshine laws and the task force recommendations come back to the commission at the end anyway. So you get your final say at that point.
No, the task force is going to be in the sunshine.
Yeah, the
Of course,
task
it
force
has to
can't be not in the sun. Yeah, it absolutely has to be in the sun. And maybe, you know, maybe not the entire commission, but maybe like the Criminal Justice Commission, I think 2, maybe 3 county commissioners get on that. And not the whole body.
I'm sorry, who was that?
It was just a comment in the background.
Oh.
You feel you have to do something now?
I can't wait to get home.
I do.
Hold on. Do you feel you have to do something? I was making a comment, but I lost my computer shut down. But do you feel like you have to do something right now? This very second?
Well, okay. Not
you're fishing.
Take a step. Yes, take a step, Ed. A task force is a step.
Well, I get
we're
that.
not going to solve the problem tomorrow.
I get it. I get that. But the problem is you don't have it all together and you're fishing. When I say you're fishing is, you know, there should be people from the community heading the task force, especially African Americans, because they know what it's been to them all these years.
For sure.
You understand? And what's happening is, I was telling you, this episode been going on since I quoted something from 1917 into now. And what's happening is we need to take a breath. Like I told Cheryl the other night when it was marching through our city, buy time, you understand? And because in the heat of battle, I said, one can forget where his best interest lies.
Yeah.
And that means we should come back and have one of these meetings again. And then if you want to know, put together a task force, at least you gave it some thought before the next commission meeting.
So look, here's what I'm going to do, Herman. There's no meeting on Thursday. And I would like to get with you again, but you know, some homework needs to get done. And so, you know, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down on paper, and I'm going to send it to you and the commission as a do not reply email. Okay. And how the sunshine works is I can send Herman an email, but he can't respond.
Correct.
Do not reply. Right. So I'm going to send you and the commission a do not reply email outlining my ideal task force. And if you could get with Ms. Ryan, who I understand you've been working with, and get down your ideal version of a task force, and we can figure out where our differences are and shed those differences before we go into Tuesday. But I agree with that. We do need some stuff on paper. I just needed to figure out what was in his head to begin with, so we could sit down and kind of do this thing. But I agree, Ed, we got to do some more homework.
Right, we got to do some. But the next meeting, I'd like to see all 5 of you here, five of you on board, because you know what? That shows unity on this.
That'll happen on the 16th. That'll happen on the 16th. And what Omari is suggesting is that he and I, I would be willing to talk to any other commissioner one-on-one in the sunshine.
Yeah.
But if not, Commissioner Hardy and I can meet on Thursday night quickly to just go over your specific outlines for a task force.
Now, you'll have another one of these meetings here. Openly.
With a lot more structure. We can't be jumping around.
Yeah. Fine.
I think we did pretty good.
You did a great job tonight. I mean,
we did okay. Look, this has never been done before.
Right.
You know, this has never been done before. So and also this is a topic, my God, you know what I'm saying? I mean, this is serious business. And so
it's not going to go away.
Yeah. I mean, with 50 people, we jumped online and had one of the most difficult discussions you could possibly have. And we had never done something like this in the city before. So I think next time, Herman, we'll have some material, some details we can get together on Thursday evening.
And absolutely. And with any luck at all, there were 3 other people that we're going to work with
on Tuesday
that we're listening.
8 days from now. Yeah, sure.
Good.
Okay. All right.
All right.
So,
it's
are we adjourned?
Do we need a motion? Or
No.
has anybody really got the last word? I'm open for one last.
Good night.
There it is.
Good night. See y'all.
That's one word. Thank you for listening and thank you for your input. And
Thank you.
the staff for allowing this. We'll see what happens on Thursday night.
Michael, Juan, Pamela, Ryan, and Keith, thank you.
And Ben.
Also got a hand in this.
And Mike signs their paycheck, so.
Yeah.
All right.
Good.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Omari, we want you to lead this, okay? Please. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.